prospect with integrity, we will get customers who have integrity. Integrity is the foundation from which everything is built on.
You better understand value. But at the end of the day, sales is a relationship business. It is a people business. It is an emotional business.
This is Sales Logic.
This is Sales Logic, my favorite time of the week. It is 8 a.m. Eastern, Saturday morning. Time for another episode of Sales Logic. Wow, Mark, a lot happening in the sales arena this week. The economy seems to be good 1 minute, challenging 1 minute, so much happening, right?
There's a lot happening out there, but you know what? It still means sales have to get done. In fact, that's the topic of today's show, how to ask for the sale. We've got a great lightning round. Top 10 ways to set the right sales cadence. And we got a question and we got a book. So, hey, let's dive in. How do you ask for the sale? Closing the sale. That's hard to do, right? A lot of people struggle with it.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's a great quoting. I think it was Henry Ford, a great saying that Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone were the best of friends. And one day in a press conference, Henry Ford was asked why Firestone tires were not on Ford automobiles. And the answer Henry Ford gave was because Harvey Firestone never asked.
Wow. Stop and think about that. This is the whole thing. So many people are just afraid to ask for the sale. And it comes back to this whole thing. If you believe in the outcome you can help people with, remember, it's not what you sell. It's not your product or service. It's what you sell. If you can help somebody achieve an outcome that they're looking for, you owe it to them to sell them. So there's nothing to hide from. There's nothing to be shameful for. Have you ever run into a salesperson that was maimed or murdered or lost an arm because they asked for an order? I've yet to find one.
Well, it's a couple of things, right? I mean, sorry, I'm trying to get didn't realize that my phone sound was on. Anyway, all right. I think part of it is we assume people know that we want the business. I think that's probably, I know I was guilty of that very early in my career. And probably the biggest shock I ever had was I stepped off a stage. They said, "We love you, Meridith. We want you back next year." I followed up all year long. And then I thought, that's really weird. I should have the contract by now. And I reached out and I said, are we going to contract? And they were like, well, we hired another speaker. And at that moment is when I realized that I cared about getting the business more than they cared about giving it to me. And if you're going to get the sale, you better ask for the sale.
Well, you do have to ask for it. And so many times the sales process that you go through is what leads you, the salesperson, to being confident, to being able to ask for the order. Here's the whole thing. And I struggle with this early on. You almost felt guilty, like you were asking for the order. You felt like you were asking them to do something that they wouldn't be comfortable with. But if you've gone through the selling process and have uncovered the needs that the customer has, the challenges that they're faced with, and your ability to help them, see, what you're doing is you're increasing the customer's confidence in buying from you, and you're increasing your confidence in asking for the order. The sales process elevates both sides to get us to the close.
Yeah, I also think that we struggle to ask for the sale because I think at the end of the day, too, we're worried about being rejected, right? I mean, I wonder what level rejection plays into it. I got to shout out Jack Hubbard here because I luckily got to see him for a brief couple of minutes yesterday, but it was so nice to see you in person, Jack. Next time dinner.
Yeah, you know what? There's a couple things here. Fear of rejection. Little kids are not afraid of rejection. Little kids, somewhere along the line between being a little kid and being an adult, we run from this fear of rejection. And I can't stress this enough. It doesn't matter. Who cares if they say no? It's okay. Here's the whole thing. If you believe in the outcome you've created, and they say no, then all it means is that they have not seen enough value from you. And again, so many times what happens is we hear the no and we run and hide. No, that you now have an obligation to find out why. What's the challenge? What's the problem? And again, stay in the game. You don't necessarily have to run from it.
Mark, so how do you get past this? If what it is a fear of rejection, if what it is a fear of, how to do it, how do you begin to get past that?
I think it comes down to it's a thing that I tell audiences all the time. You take a piece of paper out, and on the left-hand side, you write down 10 customers. You write down the names of 10 customers. And on the right-hand side, you write down the outcomes that you helped create for them. You write now how much you sold them, the outcomes. How did they benefit from that? And you look at that list and you give yourself a big hug. And you keep that in front of you at all times. Because again, it comes down to it's the level of success. Sell the success that you've helped others achieve. It comes down to it's a mindset. Here's the whole thing. If you have the ability to help someone, this is what I always say when it comes to prospecting. You have the ability to help someone. You owe it to them to reach out to them. And so you're doing them a favor. Don't run from it. It comes back to the process. Spend time with them. Develop a level of trust and confidence. The sale will come very naturally.
Yeah, I love what Bill King is saying here. If you set up the process right early, the close is a natural progression. Mark, let's talk about this a little bit. And Bill, I would love for you to weigh in a little bit more because what you're saying is really powerful. So how do you set it up early? Where do you go with that?
I mean, first of all, what I got to find out is whether or not you're a qualified buyer, whether or not you are capable, and is what I have going to benefit you. So we'll say I've understood that. And because two questions I love asking is, how is this going to help you? How is what we're talking about here today going to help you? I want to understand that. Second, I want to begin to understand if it's a complex sale, if it's a longer sale, I'm going to ask them, how have you made decisions like this in the past? I'm listening for the process that they go through, the methodology that they use, other people involved, et cetera. And what I'm really trying to understand is how am I going to be best positioning this so that you see the most value? Because many times what happens is it comes down to this simple thing. I need to buy this because I'm going to need it to do X, Y, and Z. Okay. If I can understand what X, Y, and Z is and the importance X, Y, and Z are to you, then I'm going to be able to complete the sale. Too many salespeople don't bother to do that. They don't bother to look at what X, Y, and Z is. They just try to sell. And no wonder they get offended or shot down or rejected because they haven't taken the time to really understand. In order to close fast, you got to sell slow. Whoa, that's a little counterintuitive because I got to take the time to understand what the need is that the customer has.
Yeah, so I love what Thomas is saying here, asking how can I help you as a sales strategy that works. Bill, I think, in what you're talking about in setting up the process right early, the close is a natural progression I think we have to shift what we define as a close. Far too often, we're trying to define a really big close, but what you're listening for early is what is the mini close I can take? Especially, I work with a lot of clients who have very complex deals. And when a deal is very complex, you're not going to get to the finish line right away. So maybe the close is you set up another meeting. Maybe the close is you've brought in a couple of other decision makers. Maybe the close is you're going to go to proposal and set up that meeting to discuss the proposal.
That is so key because again, so many salespeople think, first of all, the art of the one call close, that's gone. The internet's taken those sales. So you're right, it is. What's the call to action that moves us to the next step? And this is what's so key. Salespeople have to understand that there's many times multiple steps that you have to go through in order to complete the process. And that's okay. Get the customer to agree to this, get the customer to agree on this meeting or this test or this idea. In other words, you absolutely have to. I love John Wong's comment. If you've identified all the needs, I encourage my team to ask, when we prove our theory to address the list of needs, then we can assume a PO. See, this is the whole thing. It's really, have I earned proof of concept? Have I earned, in other words, with the customer, is there a proof of concept that they've earned that they now view, yes, your solution works. I need to buy it.
Yeah, Bill, you and I were on exactly the same page. We're talking the same language when it's set up early. Because what Bill is saying here, he said, when I present, I outline the timeline of the entire process of getting their loan closed if they go with us. Each milestone is a micro sale. It's a micro close, and you're progressively moving it that way. Mark, we've got a comment in here from our friend from France, and I want to slow him down a second. He said, last week I gave a quote to 2 clients who were ready to switch providers, but they still had a 2-month notice period. I wasted my time for nothing. Holy moly, you didn't waste your time for anything. They told you exactly when they will be ready to move. And if you hadn't had that sales call, you wouldn't know when they are ready to move. You better have marked your calendar for 30 days from now to go back, check in with them so you can get that date on the calendar for when they're ready to move. You know, even if you call on the wrong client, a sales call is never a waste of time because you learn something to make you better, more effective, and more productive.
You see, and that's thing. So what he did was absolutely spot on. The customer leaves clues. Customers leave clues. And that takes us to the question that we got from a great listener. It says, I enjoy the show and learning so much. However, I haven't yet earned $1 as I struggle to ask for the sale. I'm a solopreneur providing professional services, and my sales cycles are long. I don't want to blow a good relationship by being too pushy. Any tips would be very welcome. And see, that's the yin to that yang that we were just talking about. See, you do have to keep moving the customer forward and getting those small yeses along the way. And I put that question into the brain. And one of the things that came back to is understanding the client needs. This is what we've been talking about. You got to really understand what are the needs. I've got to create, or I've got to allow the customer to uncover a level of pain that they have. Pain of either financial or time. These are the 2 big things, financial or time. And if I can get them to begin to uncover that, then I can begin to craft my solution, my sale that I want to make with you around that.
Yeah, I have something I think that might help our caller in there in answering in the struggle. It sounds like she's afraid to ask for the sale. Mm-hmm. Been there, done that. You know, especially when I was in my 30s, all of a sudden I was in financial services. I was supposed to ask people that my parents used to have to cocktail parties, and I would address them by Mr. or Mrs. and Doctor. And now I was supposed to ask them if they would not only give me the business, but pay me money. I was very uncomfortable. And so I had a coach suggest to me that I look to some of my strongest relationships and just ask them, like, be honest and say, I'm struggling a little bit to ask for the sale. I've come up with a couple of ideas, or what would you suggest? What would make you comfortable? And have that conversation with them and learn from them how to ask for the sale. Because I have a feeling if you got comfortable with a couple of ways to do it that felt good for you, you would do that. The other thing is start to think of it like how much you're helping that client by asking for the sale. They've told you what their pain points are, and you should be getting excited that you've got some ideas. Like you sell, I don't know what professional services you sell, but let's assume I'm working with a concierge business right now. She's afraid to ask for the business. Well, you know, gosh, if you could take time, if you could give me time back in my schedule, because you'll plan my party, you'll pick up my dry cleaning, you'll find me somebody to work on my yard. I need that help. I'm excited about that.
See, and that's coming back to the need that you have. And this is the whole thing, that the sale can't proceed until we understand the need the customer has. Scott chimes in with a great question. Process is long, 4 to 6 months. We've had many late stage deals stall at the finish line. I think the issue here is that we're not doing a good enough job up in the discovery, the prospecting phase. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, early on in the sale is when the customer is the most relaxed, and they're going to share with you the most information once we've developed that level of trust. If you wait and try to uncover key information when you get down to the close, the customer now feels we're negotiating. And they're naturally going to start holding their cards closer to the vest. You've got to uncover all of these needs, all of these challenges, all of these timeline issues, all the early on when there's still no pressure on the customer to feel like you're trying to close the sale. I have found that works absolutely superbly well, because what it does is it allows me to sell first the prospecting, the discovery phase, negotiate second. And I don't even have to negotiate because I'm laying it out right there to help you with the need that you have.
Yeah, such a great point here from Bill Snow. Understanding their needs and drilling into their pain points before you start talking about how you can help them. I mean, Bill's exactly right. If Mark tells me all the issues and challenges that he's got, the close becomes easy because I'm able to say, Mark, I heard you tell me that your biggest challenge is finding talent in the organization. Your biggest challenge is you can get a lot in pipeline, but you can't get it across the deal. I can help you with that. Here's how I've done it with other clients. Could we discuss how I could work with you on that? It becomes easy because I'm just doing exactly what Bill said here. I've discovered his pain points and I'm using his language.
And that's so key. When it comes time to close, you've got to repeat back to them. So we've been talking here, and I understand from you that what you need is you have to be able to get this phase done in order for you to move on to the next two phases. Is that correct? Yeah. And if you can't get onto those next two phases, you mentioned that there are some customer contracts that are at risk. Oh yeah, there are customer contracts at risk. And how much business do you think you're going to lose? You see, what you're doing is you're recapping to the customer when you're ready to close the pain and the issue. And you're getting the customer to confirm with you and expand on it. When they begin to feel that, they begin to understand that, then suddenly the close becomes very, very natural. But if you try to close and not frame it up around why we're closing, yeah, you know what? Chances are you're going to lose.
Yeah, I love what Thomas is saying here. If the prospect knows what to expect, then the process flows. If you don't tell them the process, they often feel lost or lose interest. Such a good point, because like with our caller, with our question, your clients may be wondering why you've never asked for the business, and they may be losing faith in you. I think about that all the time when I'm getting a little bit timid about making a follow-up call. I just think, why would you give me the business if I'm not even aggressive enough to keep asking for it? I think it says volumes about the tenacity that I will bring to the relationship. So if you're afraid to ask for the business, you're all caught up in yourself and you're not thinking about how the customer is perceiving this.
That's where it comes back to that list that I said you need to make in terms of customers and the outcomes you've created. And you got to look at that every morning and really understand the value, the benefits, how you've been able to help customers. And this is the business that you're in. Your sales is about serving others. Sales is about helping others. And asking for the sale is the very natural next step, because we are not going to really be able to benefit each other. I mean, I'm not going to really be able to help you achieve the success that you're looking for until you say yes to the order, period. And we make it simple by wrapping it up around all the challenges and the problems that the customer has. We got so many comments coming in on chat, way more than we'll ever be able to get in. But that's great.
Yeah, I love that Mike piped in here. It said, it's such a great point. If you can't ask, you can create the perception that you aren't an expert, or you can't help them, or you don't have the kahunas to do what you need to do to take it to the next level. Always remember, fear is internal. When you are afraid, you are focused on yourself. Sales cannot be effective unless you focus on other people. The reason that you have a kid in the hospital and you can call a doctor on their cell phone at 1:00 in the morning and drag them out of bed is because you are so passionate and care so much about your child that you have no fear at all. And so that's how you need to be. I mean, you need to be, remember, the moment that you're afraid or you won't do something, say to yourself, am I focused on myself? If I am, I can't be in an effective selling point.
And many times you're focused on yourself because it's the only deal you got in your pipeline. The only deal you have in your pipeline. Well, then you know what? Panic does set in, because again, you got to feed the kids, right? Yeah. And this brings up the key issue that you do have to have a full pipeline. We've talked about this on so many episodes. Go back and listen to a number of our past episodes. We talk about how do you keep a full pipeline. But it comes down to, if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe in the solution that you can provide, then you are right. Early on in my sales career, I struggled. I got fired from my first two sales jobs because I did treat the customers if they were bowling pins. My job was just to knock them down, take their money, and run. And I struggled. I struggled asking for the order. I struggled asking why I was in the job, all this thing, because I didn't really understand the needs that the customer has, and I wasn't in a serving role. So key. Yeah.
Yeah. I love, John, what you're asking here. You said to research the customer in such a way that you know their problem. But when is it time for ask for the, I'm not exactly sure what that is, or just listening for it? Does that make sense? It makes total sense. Listen, I go into every call assuming I know what the customer's problem is, but I don't assume so far that I stop listening, because even though I may be right as to what their problem is, they think their problem is something else right now. And until you solve the problem that they care about, they can't hear you try to solve the other point. Using their language is key. And listening is a way that we tell the customer, this relationship will always be more about you than it will be about me. I cannot stress that enough. 20 people are coming in trying to sell the product. And if you just shut up and listen, you not only find out great information, but you signal that says, look, I'm trying to figure out what you most need so I can be most valuable for you. And that feels really, really, really different, because even though you may have the right problem to solve, their pain point in that moment is something different. And you need to solve the current pain point to move to the bigger problem.
So key in that current pain point, customers are really only dealing with their top one or two issues. This is the whole art of listening, because you may have a great idea, you may have a great solution, but if it doesn't solve one of their top issues, you know what? They're going to punt. They're going to wait. They're going to delay. And this is so key. Again, you're listening to find the ultimate pain point. And if what you have can't help them with that top one or two issues that they have, then chances are you're probably going to have a hard time closing the sale. Yeah.
All right, Mark, what's up with the book this week?
The book is The Lost Art of Closing by Anthony Iannarino. And what's great about this book is the subtitle is Winning the 10 Commitments That Drive Sales. He walks through exactly what we've been talking about here today, that you don't just suddenly close the deal, but you got to go through all of the homework, all of the work to make it happen, so you get to the close very naturally. Excellent book to read.
Excellent book. All right, Mark, lightning round.
Lightning round, top 10 ways to set the right sales cadence. You are on the clock. Go.
Number one is, I would say, just develop a sales cadence. Decide what your sales cadence is going to be and then structure it and write it down.
2, believe in the outcome that you create. It's not the product, it's not the service, but it's the outcome you create.
Yeah, I would say make sure that your sales cadence includes different channels, including snail mail.
Your cadence can be as frequent as you want, as long as you are bringing value to the customer. If what you're doing is say, buy from me, forget it. It's a lousy cadence. Stop immediately.
Nail your subject lines. If you're using email or something like that, pay attention to the subject lines. They really, really matter.
Number 6, make sure that you're providing value and building on every piece of information that you've learned from the customer.
Yeah. Number 7, make sure you schedule it. You don't just assume that you'll do the cadence. Make it so ridiculously consistent.
Number 8, I'm going to pick up on that. You thinking about the customer does not mean the customer is thinking about you. You actually have to do it.
Yeah, make it brief. Don't get too involved. Keep it brief and value add.
Number 10, make the cadence match the size of the opportunity. If you have a small opportunity, you're not going to stay in the hunt for 6 months to a year. If you have a large opportunity, you may stay in the hunt for a year or two. Understand the size of the prize that you're going for. Hey, great show this morning. And yes, we've had a couple people say we're recording this on Saturday before Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. But hey, more importantly, jump out to SalesLogicPodcast.com, because again, we've got the Sales Logic Mastermind, or the Sales Logic Exchange coming up, Expert Exchange coming up. And you get registered for that, because every month, the 4th Monday of each month, excellent guests. So with that, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Something we've said is helped you earn a single dollar, consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
Hey, listen, this podcast is growing like crazy because of the amazing audience that we've got. If you know a friend, have somebody that you work with that you think could benefit from this podcast, share the link. And remember, send your questions here. We'll feature you right here on Sales Logic. All right, we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic. Until then, go close a deal.